Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Purple Nuna Podcast. I'm Stephanie Conti, and I am here with the Glacia to my Flora.
Oof, that's a rough one, but
I know,
hi!
I'm sorry, but it was the only one I could make. Savanna Lanausse.
What's new? I feel like we say the same thing every podcast, but it just seems like months in between.
Yeah, I know. It really does feel like months. Like, it feels like I don't know. Like, I feel like every time I've taken, like, after every episode, like, once it's done and uploaded, I feel like I'm in retirement. And then, like, 2 days later, I'll be like, remember those good old days when we used to film Purple Noon? Meanwhile, it was just 2 days ago, and then I'm filming it again, like, within 5 days. So, but, I mean, it's going good. It's going good. It's hot in Florida right now. So
It
that's one
really
thing.
is. It's not the
Global
best time
warming
of
is
year.
real, even though that's not really what it pertains to. But how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little disturbed with the films we saw. I'm a little shook
I
still.
will just say, I apologize, Sweet Pea.
It was just a rough week, you know? It was just The Man in the Well, and then I saw Come and See, and I was like, whoa, okay.
So because keep in mind, I hadn't seen any of the films while I was writing out our little movie list. I thought all of them were like war films.
No,
Like
yeah.
I thought all of them like for sure. Like Man of the Well, okay, I botched that one. That's clearly not a war film. But 39 Steps totally looks like a war film.
Yeah, I agree. I thought
So
that too.
I was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll do like a little war film theme, do all that stuff. And it was just dark. And even while writing the description, I was like, we review 3 extremely dark films. Like, even with like 39 Steps being a little bit lighter, not to get
Yeah,
into
'cause
too
it
much
was
spoilers, it's all still dark. Dark visually, mentally, metaphysically, on every element.
yeah, it was definitely I mean, I will say 39 Steps was, like, believe it or not, like, a nice break from what we watched
I
in
know,
between,
I know.
and
Oh
that's saying
man,
a lot,
it,
but
it's so
yeah.
crazy. So speaking of like crazy things, so one of the movies that we're going to be talking about today is called Come and See, and it was filmed in Belarus. And I don't know much about Belarus, so I decided to look up some things, like some facts. I discovered 3 things that absolutely blew my mind.
Okay.
One, currently right now, I was shocked when I looked up Belarus and saw Belarus like headlines everywhere. They just had an election where essentially kind of like how our like their president, like their system is the same as ours essentially, where they were voting, and like there was a female candidate and a older male candidate who currently is president,
Okay.
and there's voting between the two. And essentially, like, they had done like surveys and everything, and a week before voting occurred, it was like, oh, like the female candidate, it has like 60% of the votes and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the voting happens, and only her 60% now went to 20%. And there is complete rioting going on and protesting because there is substantial evidence that shows that it was a rigged election,
Wow.
which
That
I
is
had
insane.
no idea about, to a point where even the female, I think I forgot her name, but she actually fled to a different country, and she made a video saying like, I am in fear for my life.
Oh my goodness.
Which is just insane. And on that note, in the link below, I did put a petition to sign where it just shows, because right now the way that they're treating, like, there's so much protesting going on in the world that we don't even know. And the way that they are treating their protesters is just completely awful. They're met with brutality over, and I mean, it's just so crazy. And so with everything going on here, in the US, with all these Black Lives Matter movement and the police brutality and all the hatred going on, I feel like Belarus needs some light shined on it, because it's almost
Mhm.
at this point mirroring our country. So I put a little petition, and it goes deep into what's actually going on and stuff like that. It doesn't cost any money to sign or anything. But yeah, I just thought it was super crazy, because I had no idea what was going on. As soon as I saw it, I was like, huh? Like, that's actually happening? Why is more people not talking about it? Did you hear
Right.
anything about it?
No, not at all. I had no idea until you told me, which is
Which
insane.
it is crazy. And also I think, and I could be wrong, I think they did the mail-in ballots, which
Mm,
is kind of scary considering, hopefully we don't see any kind of parallel during our election this year.
yeah. I mean, I don't know much about where they are. Like, Bella, what did you say it was?
Belarus.
Belarus. I don't really know much about that side of the world. I don't know really much about the mail-in voting there. I don't I have no idea. But
Yeah.
it's definitely scary to think like that's possibly what caused it, you know?
Yeah, it's scary. And then I also, because Come and See is a war film based during World War II, and I was one thing that shocked me was when looking through, and I just had a thought. I was like, in all of these World War II films, I've noticed that the German military is massive, and
Yeah.
I never really knew the figure of how many Nazis there were.
Oh my gosh.
Guess how many Nazis were in World War II?
Because
How
here's my
many Nazis
thing.
existed?
Weren't all like I'm not trying to be ignorant here, but weren't most of the young men and men in general in Germany Nazis? German
Yeah,
citizens.
a good point. I think a little bit over, and I so could be wrong. Because there's so many different, websites that say it was only 20%. Meanwhile, with the figure that I will say, it definitely feels more than 60% were Nazi sympathizers or Nazis themselves.
Jesus, how many?
13.6 million,
That's almost as
which
many people as they killed in
they
Germany.
which is crazy because if you think about it, there were 11 million deaths during World War II.
Oh my gosh.
That is almost a kill per Nazi.
That is
That's
so
actually more. That's
that's
actually
like
more than a kill per Nazi.
that's like gut-wrenching, you
Yeah.
know?
It was something that it's just, we always learn about World War II and stuff like that, like
But we don't
in
know like the
middle school, but
scale.
they don't give us the statistics. Like, I was very shocked and I felt very ignorant because I thought it was maybe 3 million that had died, like in terms of Jews that had died during the Holocaust. But apparently it was 6 million and about 5 million non Jews.
That is yeah. That
Which, which I mean, it totally makes sense when we talk about Come and See. It
yeah,
completely makes sense, and it adds more realism to every war film that I've ever seen without
I
knowing those
agree.
statistics and everything.
I
But
definitely agree.
before we get into Come and See, we're first going to talk about a short film called Man in the Well. And by the way, all three of these films can be found on the Criterion Channel. So, Man in the Well is a 2016 short film, I believe a Chinese short film,
Mhm.
by written and directed by Bo Hu. It's 16 minutes long, and it's about in the apocalypse, two starving kids find a dead body in the ruins. Man, was this dark? What did you think? It was
This was the
dark.
scariest thing I've seen in a long time.
It
Like,
not because it's like jump scare, and not because it's the whole idea of it.
yeah. Yeah, like I was thinking about it when I was watching it. The whole from beginning to end, in my opinion, the whole short film was scary. There
Oh
are
yes,
parts where you see the little kids. Well, not. I'm gonna say they're like
they're
13.
still kids. They're still
Yeah,
kids,
the
you know?
children like in really dark raincoats, and you see them from behind, and the whole thing is in black and white, and it's eerie. The whole thing is eerie. I was sitting there, I was just like, this is the scariest thing, like film wise, I've seen in a really long time. That's actually like made me
Yeah.
like, oh, this is whoever thought of this is, I
Because
hope they're
it's
okay.
not so much as like creepy as much as like you understand what's going on, and it feels so immoral
Yeah.
to watch. It just like there's something in your head that'll go look away. Like, this is because there's also, even though it's in black and white, there is a sense of realism, especially since, and I think also we watched, with having this film set, we watched two older films and then a modern film. So it, like, the realism felt even more so. Like, it had more of a powerful effect.
Yes.
But now let me ask you this. So before we get into the spoiler bits of it, do you recommend it?
If you have the stomach for it, yes. And the mental mental energy, yes.
I completely agree. Now, let's talk real quickly about, obviously, like I said, they find a dead body. What were they doing to the dead body? What, because they didn't show it, but you could kind of infer. So, what did you think they were doing to the body?
So the eerie thing I'm going to say first is one of the kids says, "Wait, he's not dead." And then 2 minutes later you see a scene of them the kid sitting on the floor with blood on their face. Now,
Yeah,
the one thing immediately that went to mind was, okay, they ate him. They ate
yep.
the person.
That's what I'm thinking. And then also because when the kid, he had like his little handmade axe and was kind of, it seemed like he was not killing, but chipping away at the
Right.
person.
Right.
It's, and like that scene right there, when there's like that hole in the floor and they're just kind of like, he wasn't dead. And the kid's like, no, he was dead. He's like, no, we can't be sure.
Yes.
Is creepy.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's extremely creepy. It's unnerving because also the calmness within these kids and acting like it is what it is type of situation, you know? And then let's and so this is supposed to be an apocalypse.
Yes.
Why was the body like that? Why did the body have chains and was like gagged and like was that like whole like I saw I was like, is this apocalypse like Mad Max style, like where people are killing people like
Yeah,
that?
it was definitely I saw that too, and I didn't wanna go down that avenue because I was like, "Hmm, that's another story." Um, Another thing I wanted to point out is I feel like these kids probably haven't that's not the first time. I got
Yeah.
that sense from what the because like you said, with the whole chipping at the body and the whole, like, just the calmness of it, I feel like it was probably something that they were doing to
And it
survive.
wasn't I think a scene like this would be less creepy if it was more animalistic. But it was very tame. It was very humane in terms of like how these people acted. It didn't come across as like, you know, like when you see survival films and people act like animals, that's
Yeah.
like you know, when you look at that, you're not as creeped out because it's like, oh, animal instinct, blah blah blah. But when you see especially kids, people acting calm
Yeah.
and still functioning after what they do, and also just the fact that these kids don't seem like kids. You're looking at kids but they feel more like ghosts of humans walking around with the way that they walk, they carry themselves, and of course that dead stare that they give off when they have essentially what I believe to be blood on their face.
Yeah.
Man, I picked some heavy films. I'm sorry. Like I just realized like I just really like I held a mental mirror up to myself and realized like damn, I just brought everyone's like aura just down. All the chakras are out of a line and stuff. But it was just crazy. Like it was just a real crazy film that's like, whoa, if you want to be like creeped out within less than 20 minutes, there's your film.
Yes. You wanna be disturbed? Good. There you go.
It was very well directed,
Yeah.
very well done. The set, oh, that ending set, even though it was just one room and you just saw the kids and filth and everything. Oh my god. It was you for that type of film, there's no other way you could have made it like that. Like you could have given that film to Ari Aster, you could have given that film to so many like new age horror directors, but I don't think anyone could have done it as good as that director
Agreed, definitely.
because of the subtlety. I feel like everyone would initially want to take this film to an extreme in terms of like what we see. It's the subtlety of this film that makes
Yeah.
it.
I totally agree with you. It's creepy,
With
calm.
that being said, with that being said, what was that accent? With that being said, God, it's because of the 39 steps. That's why I'm
Yes,
thinking about that accent. But what do you rate it?
I give it an A. 10.
Oh my god, you just threw off my whole mind. I'm like, we're doing letters? We're
Oh, yeah,
doing
I was like,
letters
"We
now?
never do that." No, it's a 10 for what they were trying to do, 10.
It's an absolute 10. It's creepy, but it is done well, and I don't think it truly could have been done any better than the way it was presented to us.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
All right, now you want to lead us into the 39 steps?
Okay, so 39 Steps was made in 1935. It's an Alfred Hitchcock film. It's about a man in London that tries to help a counter agent, but the agent is killed and the man is accused, and basically he has to save himself and stop aspiring. It starts Robert Denot,
I,
Madeline
Danae, I would assume.
Danae, okay, Madeline Carroll, Lucy Manham, and Godfrey
Hmm.
Terrell. Yeah. Stephanie, what did you think about the film? Because I do have some thoughts that are
Okay, I don't want people to hate me, but I thought the film was a little lackluster for how high people praise this movie.
okay. Good, same. I didn't. I'm
I
gonna be
thought
very
it was a good
honest.
film,
I
but
didn't. I don't care to see it after this again.
yeah, no, like, and I can understand, like, people saying, like, no, like, this was a pioneer film. Oh my God, absolutely.
Oh
There's
yeah,
no doubt about it. But in terms of, does this film hold up today? I do not think so.
yeah. Agreed.
That
Agreed.
doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, considering from, this is high tier from its time period, but there was still a lot of, and very stereotypical 1930s type of film errors, I'll call. Like, for example, like, it was just unrealistic. That's my thing. It was very, in my opinion, unrealistic.
Especially for Hitchcock. That's what threw me off because Hitchcock's films, like, yeah, they're always out there, they're always this and that, but at the end of the day, they do make sense. And I thought this movie didn't make sense, but I wasn't believing it. Does that make
Yes, I think also what a lot of these movies, this type of movies issue is that they always seem to bring in one or two girls that try to become like, they try to add in a love triangle in there, or some type of romance in there, where I
yeah,
truly
to add
believe
drama?
it was not needed.
Yeah.
I think that throwing in, like, of course, having the one spy in the movie, the Mrs. Smith,
Hmm.
was needed, but throwing in Pamela, the character Pamela, played by Madeline Carroll, kind of threw things off for me because it deteriorated from this main story.
And unfortunately, this is going to sound a little shallow, but the film hasn't aged the best in a lot of aspects.
Yep.
And again, like, I know people praise this movie, and I'm not even saying it's a bad film. It's not saying that I hated every second of it, but I kind of sat there and I'm like, and I think just seeing his other work, obviously, for me, it did spoil it because I know how good I really enjoy his movies in general.
Oh
Um,
my god, Psycho is still like, and that's where, like, for example, if you compare a movie like Psycho is timeless.
or
Psycho is ageless.
even some of his other movies too, like Rear
Mm-hmm.
Window and all these things. Like, you kind of sit there and you're like, well, you look at this and you're like, well, this is okay. Um, Again, it's not bad, but I do think that the fact that we have seen a lot of his other work, this does fall short for me.
And I think the biggest difference is between those works and things like Psycho, Vertigo, all the classics, is because I think, and I could totally be wrong, I think Alfred Hitchcock had more of a role in the writing, whereas this film, The 39 Steps, did not include him as a writer on it.
Okay, that sounds like, yeah,
And it's no doubt, like, this is still in terms visually, this is still a very good film
yeah,
compared to all the other film from this time period. This is still a very visually appealing, good directing film. It's Alfred Hitchcock, of course. This is probably, like, obviously this was in the 30s, in 35. This was already, like, starting to show us, like, okay, yeah, like, Hitchcock is a good director. But overall, the ending was lackluster. I had a hard time, not necessarily not following it, but wanting to follow it.
yes,
Uh,
yeah.
because it was, and I've seen other, like, for example, another film that came out, I believe, like 3 years before, that I could watch over and over again compared to something like this, would be something like Metropolis. Like,
Right.
films of, like, and stuff like that. And I know they're different genres and stuff, but in terms of plot, it was trying to be too intricate and too complex for what it was.
I agree. I didn't. I'm glad you felt the same because I was a little nervous getting on here and being like, yeah, this wasn't necessarily for
It
me.
was enjoyable. It's one of those things where I'm like, cool, I'm happy to cross it off my list and everything. Directing was great. Like I said, Alfred Hitchcock does not fail in terms of directing. But in terms of the story in this and even the actors, it falls short. It
Yeah.
definitely falls short.
Again, I think I'm gonna have to blame it on like the acting is very dramatic 1930s. You
Yeah,
know,
very. Well, it's very. It's almost like a parody style. Like, you know, like if someone were to do like a parody of 1930s, 40s, and 50s acting, this would be like the epitome of it.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it pains me to say that too. I will say though, another film like this film, top tier, top dog, Ministry of Fear by Fritz Lang.
Hmm,
That is a film. Did you ever see that one?
I've not seen it.
Fantastic in terms of like, because it involves like, that one involves Nazi spies, and I just see it always just seems like I like films with Nazis. What does that say about me? But in terms of, and I think Ministry of Fear came out the same year, but it's also a Criterion. If you liked this movie, I highly recommend Ministry of Fear because I absolutely love Ministry of Fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ministry of Fear came out in 44, so about 10 years later.
And it's like the same premise with the spies. I know you
It's
said
very similar where and not necessarily yeah, it is similar, but it's essentially the plot of that one is a man who has just been released from an asylum during World War II in England stumbles
ooh,
on a dead Nazi spy plot by accident. So if you
that sounds
liked
exciting.
or if you wanted more from um 39 Steps, I highly recommend Ministry of Fear.
I'm gonna check that out because, like I said, I personally liked the idea of what he was trying to go for.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very interesting. I just think a lot of it fell flat. So I'm definitely gonna be checking what you set out.
It really is like, and it's funny, even with The Gathering, a huge inspiration was Ministry of Fear. And once you watch it, you'll see why. It's
Right.
a fantastic film. I truly recommend it over this one. Now, I don't say, once again, that this 39 Steps is a bad film. It
No,
just definitely falls short in terms of what you could get from that genre and that time period.
I totally agree. But still, I mean, I don't know. I recommend you see it anyway, just to
It's
fresh
one of
off.
those things where it is considered a classic, and it's not a, in terms of it's not one that I don't think you'll regret seeing, but you might be, I think I also went into it really with high expectations
Me
too.
too. It's definitely just a one timer.
For sure, for sure. Now, what do you rate it?
It's gonna sound bad, but I give it a 6.5.
I was feeling that. I was feeling 6.3.
Oh, okay.
6.3. I hate to say I hate to do Hitchcock dirty like that, but I
To
ain't
be
no liar.
very, very honest, it's very rare for me to like films in the 1920 to 1930s area. It's very rare. So I think for me, that also might have a smidge to do with it. Not saying I don't. I love one thing that happened. I love certain films, but I do know movies in that area, it could be a huge miss or a huge win for me.
And sadly, a lot of them, this was at the time where, you know, not necessarily blockbusters, but yeah, I'm going to use blockbuster for lack of a better word. There was almost like a secret ingredient in terms of how to make a good, well known movie that, like, in terms of like getting the box office hit.
I
And
get it.
that was always having a spy plot or having some type of war thing. Throw in a couple that it's like, oh, I want to be with you, but I can't. And then they made money. Like, that's literally a lot of films from this time period. I
That was
think
a
it was
great
also
impression.
still thank you. I think it was also still like, in terms of the industry, was still finding, it was still expanding. You really don't see a lot of films outside this genre for that time unless they fall under the cracks.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with you there.
But 6.3 for me. But now we got to get into the piece de resistance.
Oof.
Come and see.
This film was rough stuff.
So let me do a little intro first. Come and See came out in 1985. It's a Belarusian film. It is directed by E. Klimov, and I apologize if I botch these names. That's why I'm only going to say two of the actors' names. It stars Aleksey Kravinchenko and Olga Mironova,
I
and there's
like
others,
the
but
accent. The
thank you.
accent is appreciated.
There's one man who plays Cossack. I cannot pronounce his name if I tried. It looks like a mix of Latin and Russian, and I'm not going to go there. But it's directed by E. Klimov, and it's after finding an old rifle, a young boy joins the Soviet resistance movement against ruthless German forces and experiences the horrors of World War II. Now, this is going to be a spoilery bit, but this is in terms of movies you have to see before you die. This is in my top 20 without a doubt.
I was very surprised to see how like this film was getting hyped up to me for a long time by our Criterion group on Facebook, but just by a lot of people in general. I couldn't believe how great this film is.
It lived up to the hype. It really did. Like, it lived up to every praise.
A lot of premises about the film are brilliant just in itself. The fact that it was filmed like a horror movie. Like,
Yep.
why are we not doing that? Considering that war is just horrifying in itself, and then through the eyes of a child who
Yeah.
makes a horrible mistake and has to live with that. Like, what a crazy and very sad premise, but very real.
Like, and I'm going to be real with you, this is probably it I would definitely, like, this is being put into my top 15, maybe top
Ooh.
10, but I have to analyze my list because there is kind of like with Man in the Well. There is no way you could have done a movie justice as much as the film itself did. Like, this film, in terms of acting, directing, in terms of the choices that they made, in terms of, production and using, like, whatever resources, this film is the epitome and what every war film should really strive to be.
Yeah.
Because even though films like Schindler's List, films like just this is what all of them should aspire to be like, where it doesn't, like, for example, like with Schindler's List is an excellent film, but I feel like in terms of the topic and what's it on can even seem a little bit candy coated because of the film orchestra and the film theme, because of the way certain scenes are presented and stuff. It kind of has a little bit of Hollywood flair to it.
Yeah.
No, this feels like a ruthless documentary and journey, and the fact that it surrounds child actors who I believe I'm not too sure exactly what Alesky's age was at the time he was filming this, but he had to be under 18.
Absolutely. I want to say like 16, maybe at the most.
Probably 15, 16. I'm going to look that up real quick, but and by far, and to be that age, I don't know what his film career was like before that moment, but this movie by far has some of the best acting I have ever seen.
I said something a long time ago when we were recording the Hunters TV show. One of the things I said is I feel like that TV show, what it did was talk about what the Nazis were actually doing. Because, like you said, in Schindler's List, yes, we see them brutalizing, we see them beating them up, and, abuse, all this stuff. But I think what this movie did was talk about what was actually happening to people in
Yes.
real life during the war. And I actually don't know a lot about what was going on in the war in Russia. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't until I saw the Soviet Union, I would say, at the
Yeah.
time, right? That's where it was based. Um,
Yes. And I believe the story itself actually takes place in Belarus.
okay, right. So I know nothing about that. So when you're seeing all the horrifying and like we both kind of knew, I think what was going on in the war. Like, yes, people were getting killed, people were getting abused, especially with
He
women. But
was 16. He was about, in terms of, if normally, like, how movies go, I apologize for cutting you off.
you're good.
If normally how movies go, if this was filmed a year or two before the release year, which was 85, then he would have been 14, 15.
That's insane.
Did you just smack your table?
Yes, I was like, there's no way he was 14.
Yeah. He's just the performances were just remarkable, not only from him but the girl who plays Glasha.
Glasha, oh god, she was creepy, but in a fantastic way. When she's talking about how, I don't know if we're getting to spoilers yet, but
Yeah, go. We're diving in. Go
she
for it.
she basically tells the main character, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. I was just about to say his name.
Flora.
Flora, when she tells Flora that his whole family is dead and he was probably the reason. The facial expressions, this the camera work where you're just looking at this girl and she has the most sinister look on her face. But then that
Hmm.
turns into like sorrow. I've never seen that. I've never seen
It
someone act like that.
the facial expressions that are used and the type of acting used in this film is typically a type of acting we never see, and that is
Yes.
people on the brink of losing, like, because normally, like, you can look at this film and if you were to not know what's going on, just kind of crop out the person's face as they make the face, people might think it's corny, people might think it's bad acting. But when you take everything into consideration, when you take in the element of what's going on, the background, what these characters just did, like, and 20 seconds before, it's not corny acting. They genuinely look like they're having breakdowns, and it's remarkable in terms of performance. And
There's
by the way,
yeah.
Oleski, this was his first film.
I
What a power! What
what
a powerhouse!
the brilliance. And there is also, besides how creepy and eerie and like just disgusting, a lot of disgusting in the nature of what was going on, of course, not like it was, you know. Um there's so much tragedy in the movie because at the end of the day this was just a 12-year-old kid who really didn't
Yeah,
know the gravity of what was happening
I think
until
also
it
we
was
have
too
to
late.
consider the time frame too. This movie only takes place in 2 days.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so to see this young, full of life boy, playing with another young kid in the fields, playing as if they're like in the military, and like the one small kid is like making this real creepy voice, by the way, where he's like, yeah, the rats,
Oh
and I was like,
yes.
oh God. But they go from that to now all of a sudden here he is, and he looks like he has aged
Yes,
50
incredibly.
years
Yes.
and the makeup and everything that they do. And even when you look at the cover of the movie, you don't think that's him.
Absolutely. That looks like a 40-year-old man.
So the way they were able to do that was just, and the fact that they chose to do that, the fact that they chose to do makeup that drastically aged him, it worked. It completely worked.
Yes.
Him shaving his head, the cracked lips, and then also when they did under, like, I couldn't, it looked so realistic too. When they did underneath the eyes, just like the dry, like the dry and like dehydrated skin and everything was like, wow, like it looked like, in terms of like movies, that you were looking at a war victim or someone who fought in the war. Meanwhile, this was a kid who, yes, did and had this done to him within 2 days, has lost all
Yeah.
his innocence, has lost who he was before, and his family, everything,
Yeah.
everything. Is there any particular scenes that really like stand out to you in this film? Because this film from beginning to end, all of it stands out.
I mean, the scene with, I think, that I was just talking about was so powerful in itself because you kind of see like his life is never going to be the same.
Yeah.
He cannot, like, that at that point the film is not, it went in a totally,
And that's the scene where they're at the bog. And or is that the scene where Glasha is yelling at him, or is that the scene where they're at the little island on the bog and all the women around him are just screaming like your family's gone?
that one. That
That
one, yes.
one. That one was insane. That one, and then also, oh my God, the fact that I didn't realize, like, what really like broke me was that all of a sudden, like, because not only was him and Glasha getting to that little island, what a scene where they're like neck deep in mud. and they're just traveling and trying to get through and struggling. That scene was brilliantly done, and the locations that they choose to film all these sequences was just brilliant. It just showed like the dedication and the hard work that these young actors did. But
Yeah.
the one scene that like made my jaw drop was now like literally 12 hours ago you had a young boy playing
Yeah.
and having fun, and 12 hours later during that scene he sticks his head in the little water to try to drown himself,
Yeah.
which is it's just it's so unnerving to a whole nother degree. Like Man in the Well is creepy, it's scary horror. This is almost like if like humanity horror, if that was ever a category, it's humanity horror.
It's very scary because this probably happened in real life. A lot of children went through so many unspeakable events during this time, during the
Yeah.
Nazi reign and all war, I think. And we don't see that a lot. I think
And
it is sugar coated for us, but this is what it was.
yeah, and even though, and like that's not to take away that films like Schindler's List
No, no,
and
I
even
yeah,
films like Europa, like those films are still brutal, but there is nothing like Come and See.
exactly. Come and see it kind of hits you in the face.
Yeah, and it truly is because of this. It is a horror film in terms of that regard, but the directing here is astounding, especially the fact that they chose not to use lights. Everything is filmed with natural lighting.
Yeah.
It gives not only a sense that the film feels older, but it feels more realistic.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
I
Everybody
think
in this
any
movie.
like I watched this film with like my mouth open the entire time because I was just shocked.
Yeah. It was it was a rough one. Everybody was right. It was a rough one for me, especially.
But it was rough in a sense where like I look back and I'm like that was a masterpiece. Like even like my dad does not like sad films, my dad is not a fan of that, but he read of like he read what we were talking about, like how this film is like important, it's crazy, it's something you got to see, and he watched it and he was like that was an amazing film because of how it gives you a glimpse into something you would never see. You would never see from a Hollywood movie. You would never see from a big budget picture, even an international big budget picture. This is something that needs to definitely be talked about more in the movie world. And, in terms of film history, is incredibly important. I never heard of this film until the Criterion Channel released it this summer.
Yeah, me neither. And I mean, there is a lot of brutal content in this movie. Whether you see it or not, like there's a scene where I don't know if it's the same it's not Glasha, it's another girl or somebody that looks like Glasha.
Yeah.
There is a girl that is raped in the movie.
Yeah, and you can
And
just tell by the way that she's walking and the look and everything like that, which is just
you don't need
heartbreaking.
this
And
wolf
the
feel. Yeah,
whistle too.
yes. Yeah. So and that was a very also eye-opening moment for me because I never really thought about things like that happening. Does that make I don't know if that's ignorant or makes sense, but I was kind of like, "Oh
Yeah,
my
like
god, like that."
I think also especially in the setting too, like with all World War II films, we only think about it in Germany or
In
in
Poland. Yeah, in
in
Poland.
Poland. That's the only place where we like associate war films in terms of like what mass war films have been made, World War II films. And so it was very just shocking too that also like realize like and keep in mind like these people didn't have yellow stars, like they didn't
No,
like there
no,
was
no.
no way of telling really that they were Jewish, and it was still at the end of the day these Nazis, the one that are depicted in the film, they didn't do it because of a political agenda. They did it because they're monsters and they wanted to have fun.
Yeah, and that's what I think the film breaks down for you very, very like like I said, it's almost like a smack in the face where you realize like this isn't like, oh, we're not in the middle of Nazi Germany. We're not in the middle. Like these people are evil. And
Yeah.
the film did a good job at like seeing that through the innocence of a little boy.
Which I mean, with stuff like that and knowing, and even in the end, you see that 638, I believe. In the end, they throw up a number and essentially say like, this is how many villages were burned with their inhabitants living in it by the Nazi Party.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's so crazy to me is that in the US today, neo Nazis are still allowed to have protests and still allowed to do their own little gatherings. It stuns me that after all of what we know, they have not yet been labeled as a terrorist group.
When clearly, like, they should. Clearly.
Without a doubt, without a doubt, there's no political angle with the Nazi Party. Like, let's be frank, there is no political angle. It is all just hatred.
Oh, absolute. Same with the Ku Klux Klan. Same.
Yeah, it's all just crazy that, like, you know, here we are, like, and this movie came out in the 80s, and here we are in 2020, and even it though, a ton of Nazis did face the crimes, I think actually that's not really true. I think only 30 Nazi members were charged at the Nuremberg trials, but in terms of there still has always been some type of effort for retribution for those who were affected by World War II. And the fact that even today we can't even simply give them as a label of what they truly deserve after everything is pretty insane.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, the history, and you watch this movie because you will see how evil the root of all of this is. I
Hmm.
know a lot of people, oh yeah, Nazi, whatever, but no, like, these people were not just blindly following, Hitler and his agenda. Like, a lot of these people were genuinely evil and wanted to inflict pain and violence on whoever they could because they
Yeah,
could.
it's crazy. Now I have a little, and I want to ask you a question because I have a little theory.
Yes.
With the ending of the film where you see Flora, there's a picture of Hitler on the ground and he is shooting at it. Was there anything that you thought might have been also represented in that scene? Because it's filled with flashbacks of Hitler, the Nazi Party, and all stuff like that. But I kind of, well, do you want me to tell you my theory first?
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
There's a moment where you see that he's obviously shooting at the photo, but when it kind of lifts up, he's also shooting his silhouette. I want, I believe that in a way he's also killing the child within him and killing who he was. And I think
So
that's a metaphor for it.
I thought the same thing. Not because of that particular scene, but just because of how the movie evolves. I thought
Hmm.
that maybe he was trying to, like, erase his past because he couldn't stand what he did. And he had,
Oh, so that whole like historical sequence could be like him almost brainwashing himself.
oh, oh,
You know
hmm.
what I mean? Like, because that would be like that just kind of like reminds me of that type of sequence where he is essentially like looking at that photo and shooting down on it, now giving himself new meaning in what he is, and he goes in and marches with with the soldiers as if his life before never existed.
Wow. You think that could be it?
I think so. I think so. I mean, it could also be like that may have not been it directly, but I think that is something that can be inferred, that can be thought of.
I
Was
could see
him like
that.
making the decision like I am killing who I was before, and this is what I will stand for, and I will, because the whole focus was killing Hitler, and pretty much him telling himself like there is no other thing to life, I must kill Hitler, this is his fault.
Right. Yeah. Oof.
It's a good film. It's a crazy film. It's something you're never ever going to see like this again. Um, this is one of those films where it's like you have to watch it. It's a hard to watch film, but in also because of it's hard to watch and just everything, it's still a very beautiful film in terms of cinematically speaking. It's a gorgeous film for everything that it stands for. You know.
Yeah, and I agree that this is something everybody should watch because, again, like you were saying, like, movies like Schindler's List, movies, Nazi films in general, like, I think they're well done. I think everybody should see those movies because they have power within themselves, and a
Hmm.
lot of them are true stories. But this kind of gives you a very real look at what was happening, especially to children, and
Yeah.
the mental and the just the mental decline of this young boy within, like you said, 2 days. 2 days of going from just playing and finding a gun, now he's no longer a kid. Now
Hmm.
he has to carry around the responsibility that he indirectly killed his family.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very harsh look, but we all need to know what happened at the end of the day, with especially with history.
Yeah. Like Schindler's List and all those other films. It's funny. I'm only saying Schindler's List. I know there's more World War II films,
There,
but I can't mention them. But it's just films of that caliber. They're at the end of the day, they're still movies where this is a full experience.
yeah.
This is an experience like no other. And then also another quick little theory. Do you think the woman at the end, although we know it was not Glasha, do you think it was kind of like an indirect way of showing us like what happened to her?
So I don't know. That's actually a very good theory. That's actually very, very good. I think the
Because
pilot.
it looks too much like why would they pick two very similar looking actresses, you know?
I agree. At first, I thought, oh, maybe she represents like women in that time. But
Mhm.
no, I think what you're saying makes sense. I think that was supposed to be Glasha's fate in a way.
Yeah. Maybe the whistling represented because remember the thing where like Glasha is singing?
Yeah.
Maybe that paralleled in some way. I'm not the director, I don't know. But I think also too, there's this weird little scene between the two where she's not like she's kind of edited in the frame and you see him just kind of acknowledge and turn around without really consoling this girl.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I'm wondering if this was him just acknowledging the fact that it's like this is what happened to her and he just turns around and knows that he can't go back for her.
I like that a lot. That's a very good theory. Like
Did
that.
anyone help the girl?
I don't think so. I don't know, right?
Now I'm going all inception-y because I'm going, did the girl exist?
Oh no! Wait,
No, I don't
wait.
know. That
I
might
don't
be a little
know.
too far.
But then, why did she look like Glasha? If she was
That's
supposed
the
to be
thing. Like,
different, why was she looking like exactly like Glasha? If she was supposed to be a different human being, what was that about? Stephanie, you now the movie is different. We have to figure this out.
Christ, because like I've seen reviews and like no one obviously everyone confirms that it's not Glasha, but no one confirms really who this woman is because it's not the woman that escaped the building with him.
No,
It's
I
not
mean,
that.
do you think that like you said, that just could have been what became of her? It didn't necessarily need to be her. He could have just been seeing what happened to Glasha.
Yeah, or like maybe she did like no matter what. I think it just have some connection to Glasha. I think no matter what, it's supposed to be some type of representation of what happened to Glasha, whether it be an imaginary representation, because maybe also like I don't know, like for example, like if I were to imagine you in that circumstance, I wouldn't be able to imagine you completely. I would be able to imagine someone that looked like you, but imagining you would be too hard. I'm diving into a whole different area of some subculture I don't know about. But like what is this? I don't even know like is that true? Like what I'm having a mental breakdown right now. Is it like okay, no, I'm totally realizing like if I were to think about you in that situation, I could not imagine you fully. What does that say about me? I
What do
think I
you
need to go
mean? What
like
do you mean?
if I were to imagine you in the like it like in like let's say like decked out like how that girl was with the blood on her face, the blood between her legs, all that stuff. I could not imagine you 100%. I would only be able to imagine someone who looks like you.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm on some type of trip. I don't know what. I don't even do drugs, but I'm definitely on some type of trip right now.
No, think about it. You're getting somewhere. Can we really like fully in detail imagine somebody that, we know we're close to in that type of situation to a full extent?
Mm-mm.
Probably not. So you may be getting somewhere with that.
Is E. Klimov alive? I'll hit him up. Be like, dude, what is this? Are we on the same track or anything? Because I'm just thinking that, and also if I were Flora, I wouldn't be able, because if he also imagined her there, full Glosha actress, and he walked away, it would confuse a lot of the audience.
Yeah.
Be like, whoa, she was just helping you before.
No,
Damn.
I think you're actually getting somewhere with that. That's
Well, if
actually
you were listening this far into it, please give us your opinion on this, because this is oh, I'm adding this into the forums, the Criterion forums, because
we
this is
gotta
something
put
I
it on
want to
the
talk about.
group. We gotta tell the group.
All right, so I mean, 10 out of 10, right? Like, there's no fighting it.
Yeah,
Like, 10
it's
out of
fine.
10.
Well, here's the thing.
Huh?
10 out of the 10, but I wouldn't watch it again. And usually I would take points for that. I would only watch it if I was showing somebody. Not that it's not a fantastic movie, and I did enjoy it.
It's a hard to swallow pill. That's
It's just
fair.
not something I want to watch maybe like every other year. Every other few years even, because it is an emotional toll on you. So
Absolutely. I think I could see myself watching this again, though, because I think it's a brilliant film. And overall, I think I've overcome the initial, like, jaw dropping sequences, you know? I'm kind of desensitized to it at this point. So I do feel like, I mean, I'm not going to watch it and be like, guys, sit down around the campfire. Let's watch Come and See. Like, it's not going to be like, 4th of July barbecue. Come and see. Like, that's not what's going to happen. But, like, if I could definitely, like, see myself a year from now going, this is a good film. I'm gonna pop it in. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. I definitely will watch it again at some point. I just don't know when.
All right. So that's that. Next time, let me look at the schedule. Let me see
Oh,
what we're
next
gonna be
week
talking
is Vamp Week, right?
about. Vamp Week. Woo!
We're
All
still,
right. So
we're
I
still getting
know it's
our creeps on, creepy, spooky week.
yeah. Now we're going from, like, existing horror to non-existing horror. How
Yeah.
delightful. So yeah,
Not
next week we're gonna
Twilight,
be
in case you were wondering. Kiss, sorry if you were disappointed.
yeah, we're not into sparkly boys. I'm here at Purple News. We're gonna be watching Interview with a Vampire, Spirits of the Dead, and a short film called The Black Case.
I'm excited.
I mean, it's still gonna be dark, but hey, it's not gonna be as heavy-hearted as, this stuff.
No, this will be fiction.
And you'll probably see from here on out, like, for the next few weeks, we'll be slipping. So we have Spirits of the Dead and Alain Delon film, because, fun fact, Criterion just announced a whole new, like, Alain Delon collection on the channel. And you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to try to sneak that in whenever we can. And it just works with Spirits of the Dead.
I am very, very excited. We're gonna be watching Alain Delon and Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. What a
Tom
week.
Cruise. Oh, it's gonna be fun. All right. As always, thank you so much to Homeboy James. If you would like to know, like, hey, I like to be called a homeboy, definitely check out our Patreon, because some of our tiers do have that option where we can call you, and it doesn't have to be homeboy. You could be homegirl, you could be homie, whatever you want. Um, Thank you guys for listening so much. And like I said earlier in the video, the link to the petition is down below. There's also a few other links there that help support us. Just help
Just
us
take a look.
whenever you can. But definitely check out that petition though. And yeah, we will see you next week with Interview with a Vampire, The Black Case, and Spirits of the Dead. Bye.
Bye.